Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hey, I am DJ Ross. I am in Mountain View, California.
Each week here on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week, we are looking back at some of our favorite video games of 2023.
Hey, 2023, the greatest year for video games since 2022? That's what they tell me.
Yeah, is that it? I don't know.
Or like 2017, I don't know. I think people throw that out a lot. 2017, 2018.
2017 was a good year.
Was it?
I don't know. It's the year the Switch came out, so...
Sure, okay. Oh, that was
stuff.
A good year then.
Yeah. So, all the good games that came with the Switch.
I played a few of those.
Yeah. I don't know. Is it a great gaming year? I don't know. I'm not sure.
I feel like
stack up compared to other years.
Now that I've said that everybody's claiming 2023 is one of the greatest of all time, I feel like it was not a great gaming year for me. I played a lot of games that... I played a lot of games that I enjoyed, but a lot of games that I was really looking forward to and then came away from thinking, Plus, and then we can get into this more later, but I feel like a lot of the games people cite when they're like, oh yeah, 2023, are just games that I don't really have any interest in. So
right.
It was difficult. It made it difficult to participate in all the celebrations around some of those games towards the end of the year.
Yes. I've had exactly that experience because every time I see, not every time, many of the times I see a list of best of 2023, it usually includes like Baldur's Gate or Starfield and games like that, just big like event video games.
Mm-hmm.
I like a good event video game. I like, but I just didn't feel like there were a lot of them specifically tuned to my interests in 2023. So yeah, not a lot of Baldur's Gate or Starfield in my life.
No. In fact, none.
Zero. Yep. I don't even know where the gate is. I'm not sorry.
Yeah. And I heard that one's really good though.
It keeps getting abbreviated as BG3. And I was like, they made another Battlefield? But that's BF.
Yeah. That's me and Armored Core 6. I was like, wait, what do I go to for Armored Core?
Assassin's Creed?
No, I think I'm over Assassin's Creed. What is it? Oh no, it's SC, I think. Well, that's not even the right thing. But I always think of like Soul Calibur or my personal favorite, Star Control. But whenever they announce a new SC game, I'm just like, what are they talking about? What franchise is this?
Yeah, I don't even know what Star Control is, DJ. So
you don't? Oh, yeah, that's it's an old one.
Yeah.
Well, they announced a new Star Control game last year, I think.
Oh.
But
what a treat for you.
Not here to talk about that.
We'll get to our favorite games of 2024 in about a year.
Yeah. Come back 1 year, the same spot.
Yep.
And we'll tell you all about Street Fighter 7.
Set a reminder.
It's just going to be Yakuza 8, right? That's what everybody's going to be talking about a year from now.
It's funny because I have a list I keep a list on my phone of like games I'm playing, games I did play, games I want to play with sort of release dates and things like that. And the only game on the 2024 list for a long time, for much of the last half of 2023, was Yakuza 8.
I just like that I will continue to call it Yakuza 8 because neither of those appear in the actual title of the game.
Yeah.
So it's just very confusing and unhelpful to people who are trying to figure out what game I'm talking about.
It's in my phone as Yakuza 8, but we all know.
Yeah, the real Yakuza heads know what game it is.
I, who have played one Yakuza game, Yakuza 7, am a real fan and have earned the right to call it Yakuza 8.
Right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. As much as Sega would love for us to talk about, what the hell is it even called? I don't even know the real name knows.
Anymore. Yeah, you
like a dragon... Infinite wealth.
Right before they slammed the door shut on calling them Yakuza, so you just barely qualify. But you did it, so congratulations.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I
Excited
remember
to be
when
a-
they were still calling him Yakuza back
when
in
I was your age.
2021 or whatever that was.
Yeah. Just excited to be a part of the team here. Thanks for letting me into your clubhouse.
Yeah.
Yakuza fans.
You're always welcome. You just have to, beat some people up.
Yes, but is it a turn-based beat up? Do I take my turn and they take
Oh, no,
their
that's
turn?
what I meant. It has to be in real time. You have to beat them up.
Oh, okay.
Until a couple years ago.
Maybe I've not earned my place in the team then.
Fake Yakuza fans.
I want to be the Yakuza fan who's like, the zombie game is the best one. That's really the best one.
Yeah. I still have to play that one. I'm going to put that on my list. That's my game of the year 2024.
Yeah. I'm planning ahead for the backlog attack already.
Did you see the interview where they actually asked if they would consider doing a follow-up to that one? And they were just like, no. Flat out. Like, no, it's not on the roadmap.
I can't say that had ever crossed our minds.
Right. They had to remind them that they made a zombie Yakuza game.
I mean, it would be fun if they seem to have sort of done that a little bit with the sort of the Yakuza brand, kind of mixing it up a little bit, right? Different time zones.
They like to mix it up.
And,
yeah.
There's only a matter of time until we have like Yakuza like on the International Space Station. Or,
I was waiting for you to say it just on the Starship Enterprise, just
on Yakuza in space.
Kazuma Kiryu in Command Red, sitting in the chair.
So all of these things exist sort of like in the Yakuza games anywhere. There's like the kart racer and the management sim and sports games and things like that. So continue to spin that out, just extrapolate outward into the universe. And eventually you would get to zombie games and sci-fi shooters and things like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm waiting for. Just, you wait long enough, every game becomes a Yakuza game.
Gears of Yakuza.
Although they still won't be called Yakuza. So at some point we'll have to correct ourselves.
Right. But yeah, we shouldn't go too hard at Yakuza because we're going to go extra hard on it in a few weeks. And at least I am. Are you going to play that at release? Is that on your list?
I'm going to be playing that one. I had to play that side story one in between now and then, so it's going to be an intense Yakuza start to the new year.
You better get hammering away at that then.
Yeah. It's short. It's only like 60 hours long.
Oh.
I don't know how long it is.
Blast through that in a weekend.
Yeah, we will find out. But anyway, what happened last year? Did any good games come out?
There were a few. 2 or 3.
2 or 3.
What is your approach generally to this episode when you look back at the previous year? Are you a fastidious note taker throughout the course of the year? Do you have a running list throughout the year, or do you get to 5 minutes before we record and throw something together?
It's not quite the last one. I used to just have a whole list of everything I played. I mean, I still do, but what I've realized that I do to prepare for the show is I just go to, you may have heard of this website, VGHangover.com, and I just scroll the posts looking at all the, the games that have been discussed. And I'm just like, which of these did I play? Did I play this one? Yes. Did I? No, I didn't play this one. And I sort of just review my list that way.
And did I like it?
Yeah. And that's where I sort of ended up in this situation. And I'm just like, I don't know if I played any good games last year.
And did they come out in 2023? Because
yes, that's the other thing.
Yeah, much better at sort of playing. Retro is not even the right word. Like games from the previous year or previous years.
Yes. Well, I mean, who has time to play every game in the year it comes out? That is just the reality for a lot of people, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do feel like I played more sort of like retro / older games last year than I have previous years.
Yes. This is sort of just for our listeners, my typical association with our structure of this show is I show up and I've played something that just came out last Thursday. And DJ has some random game I've never heard of that came out in 1997.
Yes. That was a good year.
Yeah. So it's me like, just getting my brain around this brand new thing. And he's like, oh, and then the history lesson behind whatever this thing is. Yeah.
This is another remake of a JRPG from 1993 that just came out. First time in English.
It only came out in Dutch in 1997. There's 6 copies that were made, and 5 of them were buried in a landfill.
Yeah, we got one of them.
And DJ got the last one.
Don't play nearly enough Dutch video games on the show.
And I'm all, have you guys heard of Dave the Diver?
Yeah. You heard about this game about a watermelon?
Yeah.
They're still making it. Hasn't come out yet. That's how new it is.
Well, I mean, that's a thing. That's
true. Yeah, it's in early access forever.
Early access. Yep. It sounds like some crazy sci-fi thing we made up, but no, that's how people play games.
Yeah, well, I like Valheim, my game of the year from a couple years ago. Still not done. They're still working on it. So maybe it'll be my game of the year again this year.
Yeah. Got by on a technicality on that one.
Yeah. Did I play anything good though? I was I think I ended up in a lot of, or in a similar situation to everybody else doing a game of the year list where I just played a lot of remakes. Or no, I played one remake, but I was like looking at people's game of the year lists last year, and it was just a lot of sequels and retreads.
Yeah.
And to the point where you almost have to remind me that like a new version of Resident Evil 4 came out last year. And it was pretty good, but it's still, it's just Resident Evil 4 again. It's weird in this case because it's been so long since the original Resident Evil 4 came out that a lot of people who played the remake had just never played like any version of Resident Evil 4 up to that point, which is kind of impressive considering how many times it's just been reissued on every system under the sun.
That is not a hard to find video game.
Yeah, but it was so weird reading people's reactions to it because I couldn't tell if this was somebody coming back to this game or if they were just playing it for the first time. And there was you had the whole spectrum of reactions to it, like even from people who hadn't played it before. It's like, well, it's kind of derivative at this point, or it just blew their mind how good it was and how fresh it still felt. So that was interesting to see.
And where do you land? Derivative or fresh?
I thought that they did a surprisingly good job with it. Like, I still really enjoyed it. I prefer the original for
that's
various
a big
reasons.
game for you, right? That's a favorite.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people's favorite games, but yeah.
I feel like people aren't on the show right now, DJ.
True. I felt like they took several steps back in sort of the gameplay department. They changed several core elements, which I felt like were really like defining features of Resident Evil 4, and it was kind of scandalous to me that they changed it. Like, they changed how the knife works, and in general, I feel like they just made the gameplay sort of less predictable, which sounds bad if your game is super predictable, but it was sort of like predictable in a way that allowed you to just become an expert at Resident Evil 4. Like, you just understood how every encounter was going to go if you like knew enough about this game.
Mm-hmm.
So there was just like this weird element of randomness to it in the remake that maybe made for a more organic experience, but it kind of I just felt like the gameplay wasn't as solid as the original. But still, it's still a great game.
Yeah.
I'm glad that more people are getting a chance to check it out.
Yeah. I have attempted to play, and I think I talked about this when we talked about the game, but I've attempted to play Resident Evil 4 a few times and never quite understood what the hubbub was about. But there's still a part of me that's sort of like, maybe this remake is the way to go.
Yeah, I think you'd be into the remake. I imagine you played it. I mean, imagine your attempts at the original were after you had played things like Gears of War or Uncharted.
Sure.
Which were like basically using, well, I don't know about Uncharted, but Gears of War was essentially the Resident Evil 4. Just they replaced the characters, and it was set on a different planet or whatever, but it was very similar in style. So it was kind of like the proto third-person shooter that we just got endless versions of that generation. But no, I'd be really interested to hear what you think of the remake. I think you would be able to tolerate it for more than you were able to with the original. Yeah.
Yeah. It remains on my want to play list, so I'm sure it'll come around eventually. Most things do. Cool. What what
What
else did
else?
you sort of reconsider, revisit?
What did I reconsider? Man, I don't want to. Maybe I should just go through the stuff that I just think is unconditionally good, so we don't start out negative. I really enjoyed Jusant, the climbing game,
Oh yeah.
and then Cocoon. Cocoon might be. It's like probably top 3 for me last year. It was like just so minimal and simple and effective at doing what it did. This was sort of that like environmental puzzle adventure game from the Limbo people, or like some of the Limbo people.
Yeah.
But it was just so playable. It didn't. I didn't get stuck too often. It was engaging enough to me. It was just sort of like landed in the perfect spot for this type of game. So I really enjoyed Cocoon.
Cocoon was my number 2. Like I approach this very sort of traditionally, like game of the year, yada yada, 1 through 5, and Cocoon lands in the second place for me. It was There is only one other game I think I probably enjoyed more than Cocoon last year. I think it is this weirdly like defiant piece of video game art, in that it doesn't do things that like other video games do. Like, it's single button controls for the most part. It doesn't explain itself at all. Like, you get no backstory or characterization or anything, but it is still like somehow like so engaging and so engrossing and so mysterious that I couldn't stop playing it. And when I was done, I was a little sad that there wasn't more of it. So it is it's a puzzle game. I think at its heart, it's a puzzle to solve. And I like puzzle games, so that helps. But it's just such an unusual piece of video gaming thing that I really I admire that game. I think whoever made it is clearly a very smart person and thinks in ways that I would love for more video game developers to think. It's just so unique.
Yeah, yeah. I had to say that maybe there's another strength. Is that it ended exactly when I needed it to end, because I was also sad when it was over, but at the same time, the last maybe 20% of that game, I kept thinking, if they add one more like layer of spheres to this game, I'm not going to be able to deal with it. So just they ramped up the difficulty perfectly, and then ended before it got out of control. So that is very difficult to do in a lot of games.
Yeah,
and they pulled it
knowing
off,
how to not overstay your welcome, right? I think that's
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That was Cocoon's a great game. I'm a huge fan of that. Thought that was what a weird, pleasant surprise in the back half of the year.
Yeah. Speaking of weird surprises, I would actually put Chilla's art Parasocial on my like top 5, I think. Which is, I say it's weird because it's like, it was kind of just this thing that I pulled out during Extra Life to play, and it's also a horror game. Not a lot of horror games in my top, like my game of the year list usually, because I just don't play a lot of horror games.
Yeah,
but
and it's weird because you generally sort of devote all of this October to spooky games.
Yeah, it was a bit of a rough October this year, but managed to play this one, and I just thought like it was really good. It sort of went beyond just being a horror game. I mean, it was still very effective as a horror game, but also one that I could play without just being terrified in the corner. But it does a lot of really interesting things, gameplay wise. Like, you're playing several games within the game itself. This is the one where you play as like a VTuber. So there's like all these different layers to it, and it gets really interesting sort of psychologically, because you're sort of like being stalked online. So in that way, it also just felt weirdly relevant, more so than any of the other games in this series have felt. So that really took me by surprise. I ended up really enjoying this quite a bit.
Cool. And you've played quite a few games from this Chilla's art brand over the past couple of years as well. So
this is definitely the best one that they've done out of the ones that I've played. Like, no contest. I've enjoyed most of them. Some of them have not quite landed for one reason or another, but this one was actually really good.
Nice.
Yeah, I think it's Steam Deck compatible, so you could toss that on your list if you're looking for some spooky thing to play over the weekend.
I like spooky games. I think I one, two maybe made it into my list. My number 5 game is a spooky game, Dredge. This is the spooky fishing game.
Yes.
It's funny that I feel like that, like I can say that and folks go, oh, I've seen the video for that, or I've seen the trailer for that, or he means Dredge. What a weird like combination of genres. You spend most of the game just being a boat. You are a boat, and you drive around and meet interesting and eccentric people who live on very isolated islands. And there's a great mystery, and you don't want to be caught on the water after dark, or you start to go insane and see creepy things and sea creatures come try to eat you. And it's just a really like unique and deeply weird video game, peopled with like, I don't know, kind of troublesome, weary souls, and little mysteries to solve. And it's just, I got so like connected to like the safety of the home base, but you have to explore, you have to get away. And the further you get out onto the open ocean, the more likely or unlikely it is that you're able to get back to your like warm and cozy home base in time for dark. So it's this kind of push-pull between like risk reward, and this sense of exploration and digging deeper into some of these mysteries. It just, and in all of that, you still have like a fishing mini game. So you're still trying to like make money and haul up mysterious fish and sell them to the fishmonger. And so you get kind of all this cool storytelling and oddball characters and mysteries, and just an occasionally very fun, never really frustrating, fishing mini game, which I feel like is sort of like a requirement for most video games in the last couple of years. You must at some point figure out how to fish. So to do that in a way that kind of feels like it's wrapped in a package that is unique and does something surprising with it is really, really cool.
That's impressive that they can maybe not carry the game, but you're able to tolerate it throughout the entire experience.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And it's I think knowing that the developers put a lot of accessibility options around the fishing minigame too, where that if you're there just to be kind of creeped out and kind of survive the night on the ocean, you can really tweak that minigame to make it just super easy to survive, so that you don't spend all of your time like fighting the fishing to get to the story. Whereas if you want just the challenge of like a sort of a balanced challenge of being able to actually execute on the fishing and enjoy the rest of the exploration and stuff like that, you can tune those things so that they are more challenging and a little more devious and a little less successful. So yeah, it's I think it's very smart that the developers realized that the fishing probably was going to be the point where a lot of gamers maybe bounced off of this thing, and gave you enough tools to kind of tweak it. So that it didn't feel like a friction point unless you wanted it to.
Now all I want is for somebody to make a fishing game where, depending on like what type of fish you're trying to catch or maybe where you're trying to catch it, it just pulls up one of like various existing fishing games from other video games. So it's sort of like the whole experience is like this greatest hits of fishing mini games, depending on what you're trying to catch.
Just fishing for fishing games.
Yeah. I feel like there are enough at this point where you can just be like, oh, yeah, here's the one from Animal Crossing, or here's the one from like Nier, or whatever other JRPGs have had a fishing game crammed into them.
Not to mention, 500 farming / cozy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Plenty of material out there. Somebody just got to collect it all.
So yeah, Dredge. Dredge is like the anti-cozy game. Nothing about it feels cozy. You just feel wet and damp and scared a lot. And I think it really kind of like owned that. So what a cool game.
I really wanted to play this one. I was going to play during Extra Life until I played Parasocial, but maybe this will be one of the 2023 games I end up talking about next year. Yeah. Whenever I get around to it.
Ripe for revisiting if you need a spooky game in October of this year.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
And there's some new DLC I think came out in December actually. So I need a reason to get back to that as well.
new spooky fish to catch.
More spooky fishing.
Yeah.
That was the thing. Wasn't there a thing once called like ridiculous fishing or something?
Oh yeah, I played that one. It was very ridiculous.
So this is spooky fishing.
Yeah. Ridiculous fishing, not really spooky in the least, but that's not what you were getting into it for, so it was fine.
And Dredge, not really ridiculous, so it works.
Oh, good. Got the two genres of fishing game very clearly divided.
I'm just realizing now that the number 4 game on my list also has fishing.
Yeah, I was looking at your list and I was like, oh, how much of this did you spend on a boat?
Like,
at least 2 of them.
Like, I don't fish. I'm not a fan of fishing. I don't eat fish. I generally sort of feel like fish want to be left alone, so leave them alone.
Well, so then you have to experience this whole like category of life experiences that you're not getting through video games.
Yeah, virtually. So the only way that I sort of experience fishing is in gaming.
Yeah, I mean that's how I experience fishing. I'm not a big fisher. Yeah.
I think I would take the stand that I have a moral objection to fishing. Like, you know, I've been an animal rights defender, and I generally think animals, you know, prefer not to be eaten.
Sure.
So leave them alone. Even dumb animals like fish.
Except for that one fish that's just, you know, really into that kind of stuff.
Yeah, he's just mean to the other fish and just happens to be delicious. So, what a horrible fatal mistake. But yeah, Dave the Diver. Don't call it an indie game, but no. It is like a weird random surprise that came out for the Switch late in the year. It had been out on PC earlier in the year and was starting to get a lot of notoriety and a lot of conversations about what is and is not an indie game. Not really interested in sort of litigating that side of the story, but it is a really just a fun, kind of eccentric game about a chubby guy who happens to be a really good diver and helps his friend run a sushi restaurant. And you meet a cast of very eccentric characters that come into your orbit while you sort of spend your nights hosting and delivering dishes and pouring green tea. And spend your days diving and exploring underwater cities and upgrading weapons and catching fish and then selling them at the sushi restaurant at night. And there's something about that kind of back and forth, push-pull, like management sim versus exploration that just felt very fulfilling and felt very compelling. It was definitely one of those games that I would sort of play kind of in bed at night and go, okay, well, I'll just get through one more day. I'll just dive and then I'll do the dinner service and I'm done. I'm going to stop right there. And it never really went that way. I would find myself just playing it much more than I had intended. So just an oddly compelling, curious game that does a lot of really unique things. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with Dave the Diver.
I am surprised, like, whenever I hear anybody talking about this, just how much of it is not about diving for fish, because that was how I pictured it. But it's really like he's in a restaurant a lot of the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a third of the game is the restaurant, and most of the game
it's mostly diving.
Is mostly diving, but
okay, well, I guess that checks out.
Yeah, but you're not just. It's not like Cooking Mama. You're not like running around.
Yeah, it's more like restaurant management, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're like determining like what like ingredients do I have to build dishes to go on my menu. And then you're sort of researching new recipes and unlocking new ingredients that you can add to your menu to spruce it up and things like that. So you're really, and then you have to hire people, you have to review applications and on and on. So you're that third of the game that you're running the restaurant, you're really running the heck out of a restaurant. So by the time you sort of like get on the boat and just sort of like are diving and you have a little bit of a wish list of things that you want to catch, but you're like diving a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper every time and getting new equipment that allows you to explore a little further. And it's, yeah, so again, it feels like this like very sort of cerebral, timing based challenge when you're running the restaurant. And then this just sort of like this chill, occasionally a little stressful as you're trying to sort of like fight a shark and things like that underwater. But there's something very sort of like soothing and kind of meditative about just sort of like wondering what's underwater and diving a little deeper and et cetera, et cetera. So I think it does sort of like, yeah, what's the word I'm looking for? Just sort of that cycle, that like SteamWorld Dig thing where you have like a B part of the game and an A part of the game, and the two of them are like satisfying in their own kind of unique way and feed each other in a way that that feels very sort of satisfying. So yeah, it's just cool. It feels like tuned. It feels like somebody play tested the hell out of this thing and then filed off the rough edges and asked like, what if we did this? What if we did this here? So it doesn't feel like a thing that sort of came out like half considered. It feels very like play tested. And that's cool. Like, I don't know if I need like, I don't need video games like designed by committee, but this thing feels labored over in a way that, that is kind of effortless.
Does it feel like they, went out of their way, or not out of their way, but they determined what would be the most effective way to keep people in the loop? Just back to the restaurant. Okay, now back to going on a dive or whatever.
Yeah. Before it becomes too much, before it becomes annoying, before it becomes, well, I just want to do the restaurant part. I don't want to do the diving part or whatever. I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. I see.
Yeah. It's where I sort of feel like it's been sort of like play tested. Like there's clearly somebody with a degree in like gamification has spent some time on this and like knows exactly what the right level of like, oh, that was a really hectic dinner service. I really need to like get out of this restaurant. And like just knows exactly where that button is. So yeah, it just feels very, very fine-tuned.
Oh, okay. But it sounds like in sort of a positive way. I was thinking of, like, I've definitely played games where that sort of loop felt almost like maliciously designed, where there's like no great exit point to get out of there, where you're just like, okay, so I did this one thing and now, oh no, I'll just continue straight on to do this other thing and I'll never stop playing this game ever because I can't stop because everything is just so urgent, or you're just like effortlessly ushered into the next day's work or day's worth of whatever is going on in that game.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that in Dave the Diver, but I think it feels restrained. It doesn't feel dirty in the way that I think you're kind of describing. Yeah. I wouldn't call it insidious.
Well, that's good. That's always good.
It just feels like thoughtful and considered, and I don't know how to like sort of describe it any better though. It just feels play tested. It feels like, they shared it with a room full of gamers and said, tell me what you think about this. What would you change? And then they continued to like just fine tune it from there.
Well,
I don't know if that's how it was made, but it just it does not sort of feel like a thing that kind of accidentally happened.
Well, it sounds like it turned out all right.
Yeah, I mean, they sold a bajillion copies of it, and I think it deserves it. I think it's a super fun game.
Well,
plus, representation for chubby guys doing fun things in video games.
Good year for representation. Or was it? I don't know. Is it ever a good year in the games industry?
For representation?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're a chubby white dude, maybe you did okay this year. Maybe Dave the Diver is enough. Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, but probably the rest of it is pretty problematic.
I feel like, there is progress being made, but then you run into something where it's like, oh, this, like the latest Soul Calibur game or whatever. Like, who designed these characters?
What was the demo that you and I played for the new Final Fantasy game where I was like, this doesn't feel great. It feels like
what? Like a lot of white people?
Yeah, there's a lot of white people. The only woman in the game is like this like hand-wringing villainous character, and the only black person in the game is like a henchman or something like that. And I'm like, it's a little problematic.
Yeah. Final Fantasy 16 did.
It was Final Fantasy 16.
Not setting a lot of records for representation. This game, I don't know. It starts out really strongly, I think. But towards the end, like a lot of it goes sort of off the rails, and I feel very conflicted about it. I would probably not put on my list of like top games of the year even, but I think it's just like so big that it's like can't avoid mentioning it. I feel like they took a lot of chances with it. A lot of it is very different than previous Final Fantasy games, which is something I really like about the series. It's just that they feel like they have the freedom to change things up, sometimes in extremely dramatic ways. So I like that about it. But I feel like a lot of the changes they made and just sort of a lot of the qualities about the game in general did not play out very well. Or were just not very successful. Like, I didn't really enjoy how the story ended up. The whole, like, all of the combat is extremely shallow and not very interesting. There are not really any interesting characters in it. Didn't like the soundtrack, but man, some of it is very exciting. A lot of very exciting boss fights in it. So, I don't know, like, give them credit for sort of trying to like break the mold of previous Final Fantasy games, but I kind of hope that they don't do another one like this, or they branch out in yet another direction, and at the same time listen to a lot of the feedback they've gotten about stuff like representation and how to portray women in like a respectful way in your video game. That would be good. But yeah, Final Fantasy XVI, not one of my favorites of the series.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to sort of detour into something negative there, but so,
no, I mean, it's been on my list. I was like, how can I not mention Final Fantasy XVI, being a huge fan of the series? But I just felt like it had more missteps than sort of successes.
What was a more positive gaming experience from your list last year?
What else was on my list? I was gonna call it Yakuza, but Like a Dragon Ishin, the one that is sort of the samurai Yakuza / Like a Dragon game. I had a lot of fun with that one. Really fun change of setting. It's like 19th century Japan or whatever instead of modern day Tokyo. And it's just like you were saying, it's one of those instances where they mix it up. So they took a lot of the existing Yakuza cast members and sort of recast them in different roles that were like partially inspired by actual historical figures. So just a fun side story that it's like, it still manages to feel familiar, but if you were maybe getting sick of the same sort of like Yakuza beat 'em up gameplay, it's like just different enough that it kind of feels like something else for a little while.
Do you feel like this is sort of the template for kind of Yakuza / Like a Dragon going forward, where you get a couple little side stories periodically and then like a big main game? I don't know, every 3 or 4 years? Yeah.
I mean, I was calling it a side story, but like it's not like the one that just came out. This one is actually enormous. I mean, maybe not as big as Yakuza 7, but it's still like it's one of the larger Yakuza games. There's still a lot of stuff to do in it.
Oh, okay. I don't think I had a sense of it being that kind of epic.
Yeah, no, it's keep you occupied for a while. Yeah, and with that in mind, I never even finished it. It was so long, but I played that game quite a bit at the beginning of the year last year. Should probably go back and wrap that up before 8 comes out.
You got a lot of work you have to do between now and the end of January, GJ.
I'm going to burn myself out on Yakuza games before the new one comes out.
Just not be interested in the new one at all.
Yeah.
I'm good. I need a break.
What else? Super Mario Brothers Wonder. That was fun. Another one of these games that didn't quite blow me away, but man, it's fun to play a 2D Mario every once in a while.
Yeah,
not quite as enthusiastic.
No, definitely not. No, I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to. Mm-hmm. I was super lukewarm on this when we first started seeing trailers for it, when it was first announced. And I was kind of ho-hum on it. And And then the closer we got, the more sort of previews there were. And then once the reviews landed, I was like, okay, this sounds really cool. Like people are losing their minds over this game. Maybe I was wrong. And I played it and it's cool. It's very pretty. It does some really unique things with the Mario like template. That I give it a lot of kudos for, but just, I didn't find it super compelling. I really kind of bounced off of it I don't even know if I was halfway through. I got maybe 2 or 3 worlds into it. A handful of levels, probably 20 different levels. And I was like, I get it. I understand what's happening here. And like, I don't know that I'm going to see credits roll on this thing. I generally feel that way about 2D Mario games. I like a 3D Mario. That's my sweet spot, I think. But I like 3D platformers. So yeah, it's fine. It's very pretty. But yeah, not really even like adjacent to my favorite games of the year. So I don't want to steal your thunder. You enjoyed it more than I do. What do you think its redeeming qualities were?
By the same token, I don't think I would put it up in like the top Mario games ever. But these 2D ones are so rare. It's just fun to kind of have this retro experience. Well, still, like it still managed to be quite surprising. In a lot of ways, like each level felt like it had some weird, unique gimmick that then did not reappear in the very next level. So I was really impressed by how much how much variety they managed to cram into what I played of it.
Yeah.
And I also I didn't want to just blast through it in a weekend. So I've been sort of coming back to it every once in a while. I'll just be like, oh, do a few more levels in Super Mario Brothers Wonder.
Well, that's a good thing about a game like this is that you know how it works, right? Like it's not like you're going to forget how to play Mario after a couple of months.
Right.
So if you take a break from Wonder, you can still go back to it and know like this button is to jump and this, that's pretty much it. This button is to jump.
Yeah.
All the 2D Marios more or less sort of operate in the same way. So it's easy to sample this, I think, over time, rather than having to kind of marathon it in one session.
The same way, I approached it sort of the same way that I did Mario Maker, where every once in a while I would just start that up and hit the random level function or whatever it is. And it was like, what? Give me some weird Mario level that somebody's made, and I'll play 3 or 4 of these, and everything will be completely unexpected, and then I'll just put it away for a few more months. But it's fun when Nintendo does it because they can sort of take things to the next level beyond what you can do in a Mario Maker game.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's funny that we sort of say that because I had not played, when did this come out? Kind of early November. And I took a break from it. I kind of went super hard in the first week and then didn't really touch it for 3 weeks. And then I had a flight. Sarah and I flew to Vegas in early December. And I was on the plane with the Switch going, what can I dip into that it's not doesn't require a lot of brain power, it's very portable, and I went back to Wonder. I cleared up a few levels in that. So maybe for me, that's the best way to kind of consume this thing. Is just every now and then when I have the itch, be good at Mario for 3 or 4 levels and then put it back on the shelf for a little while.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to approach it. What else on the list?
My number 3 game of the year was Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals. Talked about this quite a bit, not even that long ago. So, I think kind of a really kind of best case scenario for how to approach a sequel to an indie game that I really liked that didn't necessarily need a sequel. Kind of took the skeleton of what made the first game good. Kind of spooky, all night exploration, mystery solved, kind of compelling cast of characters that sort of come together in different ways, and just kind of evolve it. Different characters, a little bit older, different age group, overlap with some of the details of the first one, but kind of have its own thing that ties back to the history of this mysterious island and these interesting kind of time warp effects of you kind of opening portals to other dimensions and times and it asks a ton of questions and you have 10 kind of rolling mysteries at a time that you're trying to piece together and just found it super compelling and super satisfying. This is a game that I absolutely marathon. This is probably my longest single sitting gaming session of the year, was just going super hard on Oxenfree 2 the weekend it came out, because I didn't want to don't forget like this detail, or don't forget that you need to solve this mystery, or don't forget to go to this place. So it was best to just like power consume it. I felt like it's just really good. I love the music in these games. We talked about it on my the favorite game music of the year episode, and just killer soundtracks, really good writing, really characters that sort of feel like real people and talk to each other like real people. It does a really interesting Night School is the studio here. They do a really interesting thing about how you sort of choose dialogue options and stuff. It just feels very cool and super compelling, and I had a really good time with it.
Nice.
Yeah. Not super surprising that I had a good time with it, but
yeah. I know you're a fan of the original.
Yeah.
Which I was not really, but from what you said about the sequel, it kind of made me think like, oh, maybe I would enjoy this one. Whereas the first one was a bit of a struggle.
Yeah, I can see that.
With that said, I did not play Oxenfree 2. So put that on the list.
Yeah. I think, what do I think? I think, I think this sort of reaches people kind of in different places. It's not like you don't need like the ability to like drive a car or shoot a gun. Like it's a lot of like walking around and talking. And if like that works in a video game for you, then Oxenfree is really good at that. If there's things in the past, like what? Like Gone Home or Firewatch, that are really just kind of walking and talking games, that you found compelling and like speak to you in some way. I think the Oxenfree games really kind of crank up that sense of mystery and kind of intrigued, and it feels super kind of compelling and motivating to like go around and like connect some of these dots and try to solve some of these mysteries. So it's fun, but you're not doing like Twitch platforming or anything like that. It is kind of an anti-video game in a lot of ways.
It's almost it feels a bit like one of those Telltale adventure games where there's not a lot of action sequences, or probably none, at least in the first one that I remember.
Yeah.
But it's more just sort of like a story showcase.
Yes, I think that's pretty astute. Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Absolutely. It's interesting that Night School, that's kind of like their house brand in a lot of ways. They've made quite a few video games that all kind of function in that way. And the one time they kind of deviated was their game After Party, which was still kind of a walking and talking simulator.
I thought that was like the same game, isn't it? Or like the same format?
It's similar format. It's like still walking and talking. Two friends, after a night of kind of hardcore partying, wake up and find themselves in hell. And they have to beat the devil at a bunch of drinking games to get out. So you get the, like, how did we get here? What did we do last night? Like interpersonal drama. But you also have a bunch of kind of fun mini games. And the mini games are like the weakest part of that experience. Like I kept wanting After Party to just be these two friends, like unpacking their experiences with each other. I think it's the one time Night School kind of deviated from that is like, it's okay.
Okay, I don't think I realized that the drinking games were that much of a component in that game.
Yeah,
I imagine it being much closer to Oxenfree.
Yeah,
doesn't sound especially interesting. Just playing
maybe
Mario
the years
Party
have
drinking games or whatever.
Changed my perspective on it a little bit. I remember sort of being kind of quite into it when it first came out, but the more I look back upon it, like I would play Oxenfree again. Like I feel like there's enough like choices you could make to kind of keep it interesting to sort of approach a gameplay and your trip through the game in a different way. I don't know that I would go back to After Party. I feel like I get it.
Well, speaking about going back to a game, that brings me to Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which I revisited over the holiday break after not having played it for like 5 or 6 months, I think, according to my save file. It was, the last time I picked it up was in July, I believe. And I decided, like, there's a lot of stuff I enjoy about this game, but I think that there's a lot of stuff that I actually really dislike. And I don't know where that leaves me with this game. Because I played it for a couple hours, and I realized, like, okay, so I really enjoy wandering around and just sort of the discovery of things. But I don't like whenever it forces me to engage with like anything other than that, because like I don't like the combat. I don't like the crafting system. It feels like such a chore. I think the whole like mechanical like building system is really cool. Do I want to do that in a Zelda game? I don't think so. So I'm like struggling with this because I really wanted to like get back and get into it and do some of the dungeons. My plan was to have this wrapped up so I could talk about it on the show and proclaim that, oh yes, Game of the Year 2023. But I don't think I didn't even make it several, like more than 2 or 3 hours into it, because I got to the next dungeon and I realized in order to get through all the sort of like combat sequences, I was going to have to go and like forage and craft supplies for probably several hours. And I was just like, I don't want to deal with it anymore. And I stopped playing it. So, I don't know. Game of the Year?
Yeah.
I just feel like, I loved Breath of the Wild. But I think so much of my enjoyment of that game was, my long history of playing Zelda games. And just the fact that Breath of the Wild was so different and did so much unexpected stuff for a Zelda game. It was like this complete shock. But at the same time, it had a lot of issues, and a lot of the same issues that I had with Tears of the Kingdom, like the combat and the crafting and just the general interface being difficult to deal with. And they fixed none of that, I feel like, for this one, which is really frustrating to me because literally nothing is improved from the first game, and it feels like it still manages to be surprising in new and interesting ways, in ways that Breath of the Wild was not surprising, or like it's surprising in different ways is what I'm going to say. But all of the baggage of the just incredibly clunky menus and the combat, which is either like you're not taking any damage or you're just taking your entire health bar worth at once, and you're just having to manage your inventory of weapons, and like did you bring enough like health items and potions and everything. It's such it just makes me do all these things that I don't want to do and I don't enjoy doing in this game. So Did I like this game? I don't know. I liked about half of it.
I see you, DJ. I acknowledge you. And I think I agree with you. I think my perspective is similar. It is my number one. It is the game I spent the most hours with last year. Does that mean it's the best game?
I played it for like 40 hours, which is a lot considering I didn't do anything. I did one dungeon, and I have like a few more heart containers than I did at the start.
I think I'm further along. I think I'm somewhere in the 60s or 70s, but still a far cry from the 200 plus that I put into Breath of the Wild. And yeah, I feel like it's just too easy to be aimless in Tears of the Kingdom. Like, I don't know that I necessarily felt like there was a ton of like momentum behind the Breath of the Wild experience, but I think I was disciplined enough of a gamer in that particular year to like stay on the path. And there's so much stuff in Tears of the Kingdom. There's so much foraging and crafting and exploration and detours and like distractions that I think I'd played 25 hours and I had not really even done like the first thing on my checklist. And I'm like, what even is this game?
It's like, I think we talked about this several episodes ago, or maybe it was on the finale, where it's just like too much of a sandbox. It's not a good game to play when you have like a checklist of things to do. It's super fun to get lost and just sort of wander around and get into like, incidental events or happenings or whatever. Yeah. But it's so hard to just focus on one thing because, I don't know, it feels like the earlier Monster Hunter games where I would say, I have to fight this monster, but in order to do that, I have to build this specific set of equipment. And in order to do that, I need all this other equipment. And it just becomes this endless shopping list of things you need to do. And by the time you get through with it, you've forgotten what you originally set out to do in the first place.
Right. Yes. And yeah, you sort of like your prerequisites have prerequisites, and you're no longer on the path to the main thing. You're just doing 15 other things. And oh, by the way, can you help me stick up this sign? And
yes. That's one of the few things that I just always was totally fine with doing. Like, yeah, I'll do this physics puzzle or whatever. The ones that only take like 30 seconds. I don't want to do the whole shrine. Like, I got to the point where the shrines were super fun in Breath of the Wild, but every other shrine I pop into in this, and you look at it, and it just looks like Mousetrap. You're like, I don't know how to put this all together. Whatever reward I'm getting at the end of this, it's not going to make up for the time I spend on it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I agree. I like there's a lot here that I like. It's fun to sort of be back in this world. And it's, I think the developers did a really good job of like addressing the lack of variety in enemies from the first game, from Breath of the Wild. I think Breath of the Wild was very much like sort of like Bokoblin Camp after Bokoblin Camp, and Tears of the Kingdom certainly like diversified the number of enemies that are present. I think many of them with ties back to like classic Legend of Zelda games, which was kind of fun to sort of unearth. But yeah, I don't know that I sort of necessarily find the combat especially exciting or compelling. So a lot of the time that I spent was just sort of like, oh, it's the hand things again. They're going to try to like grab me and choke me. And so I spend most of my time like running away from them.
Yeah. I basically avoid combat as much as possible.
Do not engage. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I spent like, 16 hours underground just walking around and like finding out what's hidden and like building a glider and then flying it over to another thing. And I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore.
I think that's the ideal sort of mental state to play this in, where you're just like, okay, I have 4 hours to kill. Let's just find out what happens in Zelda today. Because that was sort of how I approached it at the start, right when it came out. Because, like, I don't know what you're supposed to do in this game. Let's try and figure it out. And in that sort of state, it's really interesting because there's just so much thrown at you. But not to repeat myself, as soon as you start to focus in on the one thing, you realize, like, either you don't have, like, the focus to stay on that track, or there's just so much other stuff. There are so many other prerequisites that, I mean, at least in my case, because I wanted all these healing items and everything to minimize the frustration with the combat. So it just kept pulling me away from what I thought I was sitting down to do. Sure.
And even just sort of the exploration itself is gated by having the right armor or the right, boat or cart or whatever that is going to pull you or get you across the thing, or which requires construction, and you don't have all the tools you need just yet, and on and on. So like even like the mini objectives I kind of gave myself, where I'm going to like, well, I'll unlock all the towers first so I can fill in the map, or I'll get this suit of armor that I need clearly to be able to sort of like hold my own, and like just even kind of like giving myself those like short-term incentives unlocked like 15 other things that I knew I had to do to get there. And it's just, at some point it becomes paralyzing. It's just choice paralysis. Like I don't know what to focus on. So I'll just play, Super Mario Odyssey again.
Go to something a little more focused.
Right. Where I always know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't know that I'm in like the mindset for the particular type of sandbox that Tears of the Kingdom is.
Yeah, I think that like going back to it with the hope of just wrapping it up in a weekend, ignoring all the side quest stuff was probably a mistake. So I fully intend to go back and play it in sort of the way that I described. It's just like, hey, let's just not do anything but Zelda this weekend, and we'll see if we've made any progress by the end of it.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was unexpected to me that this was sort of my reaction to this game.
Yeah.
By the way, the thing that frustrates me the most is that I spend so much time just going slightly out of my way to pick up every single little crafting material that sort of sparkles at you as you're, wandering through a cave or whatever, that when I got out of this dungeon, I was like, okay, I just need to make some food real quick. At this point, I must have every single crafting material I could possibly ever need, because that's what I spent the entire game doing, just picking stuff up, and I had nothing. So it's like, how do I not have the ingredients I need? Like, where even are they?
Mm.
So yeah, that was the point I realized, like, oh, okay, this is going to take a lot more effort than I was expecting.
Looks
to
like
put
it's
in this
spicy
weekend.
apples for dinner again.
It's like, how many apples can Link eat before he gets, I don't know, like cyanide poisoning or whatever?
Yeah. I mean, that all of that said, like I had fun with the thing that this was. I was really into this whenever it came out. I was super excited about it coming out. Like I remember the sense of anticipation just being like paralyzing. Like I can't wait to play this game. And
I know
then,
you're like clearing your calendar and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I used a PTO day. I mean, I would not spend 70 hours with a bad game. If it was a video game that I didn't like and didn't enjoy playing, I would not hang around for that long. I think you and I have known each other long enough, and our listeners have listened to me talk about video games enough to know that if I'm not into it, I'm out.
Yeah.
And I hung in there for a long time with Tears of the Kingdom. And I had a really good time with it. I have fond memories of the things that I did and explored and learned how to play with. But yeah, my look back upon it is just sort of this mixed bag of like, I wish it was these other things. I wish it was more focused. I wish it was a little more linear. I wish it was a little less ambitious. But still, had a good time with it. It's just, yeah, it does occupy kind of a weird place on my list and kind of in my heart.
Just another knock against Final Fantasy XVI, because that's what pulled me out of my flow for this game. I like put it down so I could play Final Fantasy.
Oh, really?
I just didn't pick it back up again in the right way. So, what can you do? Well, anyway, with all that said about Legend of Zelda, that leaves me with only one remaining choice for my Game of the Year candidate. So, Street Fighter VI, congratulations. Just always a joy to get into this game. Never had a bad experience with it. Capcom did just an amazing job with every aspect of this game. Love the new cast. Love the soundtrack. All of the sort of visual design. So good. And my favorite part of this is I barely even played like the versus fighting mode. I spent the bulk of my time in this game in the story mode, which is just bad. It's just you just make a custom character and you run around and you do like stupid fetch quests and you do like these miniaturized versions of Street Fighter matches that don't last more than like 15 or 20 seconds. It's like this weird bastardized version of Street Fighter that they like reconfigured to work as like a single player like not really versus fighting game type of experience. But for some reason, I'm just like, okay, let's just play stupid Street Fighter for half an hour every once in a while. And I tell myself, like, after I've gotten my fill of this, then I will go, like, take it online and start learning some of the new characters and everything. But I don't know what it is. I just like stupid Street Fighter for some reason. I don't know what sort of other people's experiences with this have been. I feel like they've like Capcom has done some serious effort with Street Fighter 6 to make it accessible to like non-Street Fighter players. So like
to me.
Yeah, sure. They've added multiple control schemes. Each one is progressively more accessible to the point where there's one that is just like you mash buttons and crazy stuff happens on the screen. That's really all you want in a fighting game on some level. And then they've added this this story mode, which I was saying it was bad. But that's sort of my take on it as somebody who has played fighting games for a long time. Because if it's like the story mode itself is not really Street Fighter, it's just this weird version of it. But it's like I feel like it's enough Street Fighter, whereas somebody who has never played Street Fighter before would feel like they are getting this little taste of the Street Fighter experience, and it really eases you into just like, okay, fight this one guy for 15 seconds, and it's like the WarioWare version of Street Fighter, where it's just like this quick thing, and you only start out with a couple special moves, and maybe they've got some weird special ability that they're also using, but it's just this series of like bite-sized mini Street Fighter experiences. And then in between, you do a bunch of stupid fetch quests, which everybody loves to do those in games these days. Then you get a new objective on the map, and you go do that one. So it's kind of brilliant, I think. And I would be surprised Well, I wouldn't be surprised if there are tons and tons of people who pick up Street Fighter 6 on a whim, which is like not the easiest thing to not the easiest decision to make. And they end up playing the story mode, which is very accessible, and then through that they eventually venture online and play more of the traditional fighting stuff. Or at least that's my hope, because I feel like it is the perfect sort of like pathway to playing a fighting game.
Well, I think that's super smart. I think like that onboarding can be overwhelming, right? I think that, you know, I would think, well, Street Fighter 6 is not the place to like start playing Street Fighter. But if there is some pathway to like building your skill set and sort of like figuring out all of the intricacies of the control schemes and yada yada before you even have to indulge in getting your ass kicked by a 13-year-old from some foreign country when you go online is probably super smart to like get people to break through some of those barriers. So I don't know if it's enough necessarily to get me to the party.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much they can do.
Right. And I mean, at some point you have to acknowledge, like, I'm just not really into fighting games. But if you are and have like always avoided Street Fighter because you don't like I don't know how to hang with that crowd. It's cool that they could have made a tool that allows you to sort of feel like you've got a fighting chance.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really hope it's sticking with some people, because it's like, as soon as I realized what was happening, I was just like, oh, this is just the Trojan horse of Street Fighter games. How you trick people into playing Street Fighter 6 is give them this weird story mode and then see how long they keep up with it. But even, apart from the story mode, like the fighting, it feels so good. Although, like I mentioned, the cast is really amazing. But based on what I've seen online of people who have spent significantly more time with it, it seems like the reception is very good. So I'm also just very happy to see that, because they needed a strong win after Street Fighter V.
Cool. Well, good. Listen, I'm all about a good single player in a game that is objectively just kind of meant to be online. I think, like, I am the defender of like single player Halo and single player Battlefield games and single player Call of Duty.
The campaign mode.
I like the campaigns in those games, yeah. And I felt like my experience of playing through the 5-hour campaign in Modern Warfare 2, like made me feel like okay enough to venture online and maybe try my hand at some online skirmishes. So I think if properly structured, and if you're open to sort of consuming games in that way, you can learn a lot from those single player experiences that hopefully give you some skill set and some twitch reflexes to be able to stay alive for more than 30 seconds in the online, I mean.
Yeah, it'll certainly give you more of an advantage than if you had just hopped into the online immediately.
Right. Yeah. Which just, I would be paralyzed with fear. There's just no way that I would ever think of like, firing up a new Call of Duty game and just immediately building my character and going online.
Oh yeah, no, I've done that. It's terrifying.
Ooh, no.
I was going to say, when you were saying single player, I was thinking like, I may not even do the online mode. I may just see how the computer, how the AI measures up these days. Gotcha. Because I was just thinking, like, that's how I used to play Street Fighter. Like, if I couldn't have friends over or I couldn't go to the arcade or whatever, I spent so many hours just playing against the computer on the PlayStation. Like, you can still do that. It's still an option in the game. You can play the full rounds too. You don't have to do the little tiny story mode rounds. Nice. But like my PlayStation Plus is expiring in a week anyway. So am I going to pay an extra $100 so I can keep playing Street Fighter 6 online? I don't know.
The window is closing on you being beaten up by a 13-year-old from another country.
Yeah,
yeah.
Although I kind of think, like, man, what if it was like being back in school, or just those endless evenings playing fighting games against other people, just getting a lobby going or passing the controller around in those days. That could be kind of amazing. So I'm thinking, like, man, if there's anything that gets me to re-up PlayStation Plus, even though I apparently don't use any aspect of it, maybe a Street Fighter 6, or wouldn't that be, I would, what am I trying to say? I would be glad if Street Fighter 6 was the game that got me to do that.
Yeah, I could see that. Well, cool. I mean, I didn't think it was going to go that way, DJ. I'm trying to look back. I was trying to sort of guess, like, what did DJ play in the last year? What were the games he talked about the most? And it's inevitably always the Final Fantasy MMO.
Yeah. Well, no, they didn't have an expansion last year. This year, though, yeah. We'll see how that goes.
But yeah, cool. Well, good for you. I'm glad you enjoyed.
Yeah, it was a real surprise to me. And like I was saying, like, you know, not putting down Street Fighter 6 or anything, but there just wasn't that there weren't a lot of games that just stuck out as like, oh yeah, this is the game of the year. I mean, I thought it was going to be Zelda, but I could not in good conscience give that game of the year this year because I just had such a mixed experience with it. So I'll happily give it to Street Fighter 6 because every time I start that up, I'm just like, oh yes, let's do it. Let's just, you know, turn the volume up and let's punch some people. It's great.
Sure. Whereas Tears of the Kingdom eventually feels like, well, I'm clocking in for my shift.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just like, oh, I don't even know where to catch this type of fish. That's where I like put it down. I was just like, I need to make some rice balls. I don't have rice or fish, so this is already not off to a great start.
Well, that fish is only available in a pool of water on an island 6 million feet in the air, and you need, good luck.
My final Zelda anecdote is, so I ended up, I tracked down the fish. I was like, I had to like use so many guides to get my shopping list for all the food I was going to make, which is like, was disappointing to me because I don't think I used, I rarely used guides for Breath of the Wild because so much of it just felt so organic.
Yeah.
But I was like determined to make this food and get to the dungeon. So I looked at this guide, I want to get the fish, and I found the fish. And then it turns out one of the most effective ways to catch them is by shooting an electrified arrow into the lake, and it just zaps all of them, and they float to the surface.
And they float to the top, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, that feels like the Breath of the Wild experience that I remember, just doing weird stuff like this. So it was kind of a nice note to hang it up on, and at some point I'll get back to electrifying those fish.
Nice.
But yeah, you can't force this game, is what I've realized from my time with it.
Yeah, I think you just have to sort of embrace the fact that it's going to take you several hundred hours.
Yes.
I don't have that in me right now.
It's hard to squeeze that in over a weekend.
Yeah. I had written down a couple of honorable mentions. Just a couple of puzzle games that I really liked. I like Jusant. I think that is certainly worth a mention. That was the kind of the rock climbing, mountain climbing video game. Viewfinder is a really unique kind of perspective shifting puzzle game that I found super satisfying. I thought there was a really unique way of sort of structuring it too, and that you had kind of like your main story puzzles, and then occasionally it would give you like a terminal you could go to that would have some like really deviously difficult puzzles, and you could skip them if you wanted to and didn't care. But if you were really sort of into the tools of Viewfinder and really were up for that challenge, you could really kind of wrap your brain around some like next level Viewfinder insanity. It was a really fun and smart way of like addressing like growing difficulty over the course of a game, over the course of a puzzle game specifically. And then kind of last but not least, I would be remiss in not mentioning Suika Game, or the watermelon game.
Yes, of course.
As much time as I spent with Tears of the Kingdom last year, my number 2 most played video game was the watermelon game. What a dumb game. Just like a video game product. It does one thing. It has one mode. And I just oddly found it super compelling and could not stop playing it for a good period of time over the course of 2023. So, the price is right. I think it's a $5 game to do this one thing. Never ever, like over the course of dozens of hours of playing this, ever felt like I was good at it or like I had a strategy. I was like, well, maybe I have to play it this way. Maybe all the big fruit go on one side, the little ones go on another. Like just everything I attempted, nothing helped.
You didn't feel like you were like making progress, like 100 hours from now I'll be a master at this?
No, it was never like, it's like what, Othello, like a minute to learn, a lifetime to master. Maybe that's sort of the Suika Game approach. I don't know if 100 hours would make me suddenly much better at this game. But the 30 or 40 that I put into it didn't help.
Oh my god.
It's insane how much time I spent playing Suika game.
Huh.
So maybe this should be my number one. I don't know, but it's
I respect that.
Yeah, it's just a really fun, really dumb puzzle game that I found super addictive.
I was like, as you were saying that, I was just thinking, that's just Tetris. It's just such a simple idea,
sure.
and there's not a lot to it. I would say, like, you can definitely build up skill in Tetris. I don't feel like there's quite as much chaos as there is in the Suika game.
Yeah.
But, sometimes you just have a simple game that does one thing really well.
And that's an interesting perspective in that, like, over the history of Tetris, when the myriad versions of Tetris that inevitably came out, the game was at its best when it was just Tetris. When it was trying to be other stuff, it was never quite as good as just that core gameplay. Yeah. So, I don't want a world where Suika game is like gets iterated upon and has like 40 different modes and yada yada. Like, I think this thing is enough. It doesn't need to be more, in the same way that Tetris probably doesn't need to be more. So maybe you're right. Maybe there is sort of a lane that puzzle games like this can kind of exist in, where they find their kind of singular mechanic that is compelling, and that's enough.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like a crossword puzzle. It's like,
sure.
It hasn't changed in like 50 years, or like however long crossword puzzles have been around. Probably much longer than that. But
people still buy newspapers to be able to play those. So
yeah, you don't need them to be, don't need more bells and whistles on there.
Yeah. You find a thing that works and you stick with it.
Yeah. What is the weirdest game I've ever declared game of the year on here? I don't know. Vampire Survivors? There was a lot going on in that game, though. I mean, on the surface, it looks very simple, but it's very, very surprising.
And it continues to grow.
It continues. Yeah, I'm behind. I'm way behind. So this year, all Yakuza and catching up on Vampire Survivors DLC.
Before we exit here, any gaming regrets? Anything you wish you had played that you didn't get around to?
I don't know. I mean, Baldur's Gate is not really the type of game that I think I typically go for, but just seeing all the discussion around it makes me curious. Like, maybe if I was going to venture into this genre, this is the one this is the entry point. This is like the best version of it, I guess. So maybe at some point I'll play that. I was very curious about Armored Core 6. That's the other big game that I just forgot existed that everybody was very excited about. To my credit, I played some of Armored Core 3 and didn't really care for it, but it was also quite old and difficult to get into. I feel like they must have modernized it a bit in this iteration. But just the fact that it's a FromSoft game makes me a little wary. So maybe at some point I'll check it out. But I also want to give a shout out to the team at, what are they called? Digital Eclipse, who did the Atari collection last year. It was sort of the interactive documentary.
Oh, yeah.
They put out a couple things this year. They did Making of Karateka, which was an old like kung fu game or karate game, I suppose. It's supposed to be very good, looks very interesting, and it's sort of like their first documentary style approach to one individual game. And then I think they did like a reissue of Wizardry, which is a very old and incredibly influential sort of dungeon crawler. I forget what the exact circumstances around this are, like if it's leading into something else later on that they might be working on, but just on the strength of that Atari collection, I wanted to give both of these a try because that one was so interesting and just a really, really unique and creative way to use sort of the video game medium to do other things than just play a video game. So
that Atari 50 collection, that is an excellent way to spend $30. I think if you're listening to this episode and you're at all interested in sort of the history of video games, if you grew up in the Atari era or that predates your consumption of video games, I think it's still super interesting and super compelling and kind of like bucketed in a way that makes it really interesting to just kind of explore the history of this kind of legendary at this point a video game developer. So that is a really, really cool package, and maybe I should have sort of started with that. I feel like maybe I need to reconsider my top 5.
Oh, yeah, I didn't include that because I think it was last year. Or no, it was 2022 at this point.
Oh, was it really?
But,
I thought it was this year. Yeah.
Well, I think both of us only played it last year. But yeah,
Oh,
that
maybe
would have
was.
been, if it was 2023, that would be on my list for sure. I could be mistaken.
And they just added content to it. They added more stuff recently.
They keep adding more like weird. I don't know if it's like more games that they unearth, but they sort of like do these updates to other games or do new games like inspired by some of the older games. But just a lot of really interesting stuff going on with that collection. And you don't even need to be a huge Atari fan. Like I certainly wasn't. I never had an Atari. I was just sort of like seeing it as an opportunity to see what I missed. And it was really cool. So that's why I'm hoping to play both these other games at some point in the near future. Just squeeze them both in before Yakuza comes out. I'll just keep adding to the pile.
Yeah. For me, those would be Persona 5 Tactica, which is sort of the turn-based kind of revisiting of Persona or Persona 5 that came out I think mid-November. I had one kind of glorious weekend of having a lot of fun with this, and then just in the craziness of holiday, like completely disappeared, like completely just stopped playing it. And at this point, if I went back to it, I think I probably would have to start from scratch. So it's not a dissertation on its quality by any means. It just time and place, and just did not have the bandwidth during Christmas time to think about turn-based strategy games. But,
hard to just casually knock out a Persona game in a week.
Right. It's not built for like, pick up and play. I think in a lot of ways, like you really have to like commit to this. So yeah, I like Persona stuff. I like turn-based games, so this feels like particularly sort of tuned to my interests. But I do hope to get back to that at some point in 2024. And the other sort of great omission for me is Alan Wake 2. This has sat on the hard drive of my my PS5 since it came out in October, and I have not touched it. And I think I've said at least twice on our Discord, this is the weekend that I start playing Alan Wake 2.
I thought you had played this.
Nope. I just I get distracted by other stuff. Like I feel like it's an undertaking. Like if I'm going to play this big, AAA, AA, I don't know where Alan Wake lives. This big video game, this spooky video game that arguably has like a lot of like story and characters and things to sort of figure out. And like, I want to like be able to like devote myself to it and like get it across the finish line and finish it. And just have not been at a place where I feel like I've got that runway now. So, yeah, I will build that somehow into my 2024.
Oh, I don't know if I should play this. I heard like the most superlative stuff about this game to the point where
love it.
I know. I'm just like, oh, should I play it? And I try and sort of normalize it based on how much people liked Alan Wake 1 and also Control and how much I enjoyed both those games. I'm just like, ugh. So how much would I really enjoy this one? I actually went back and tried to replay Control because I never finished it.
Yeah.
Because I hear like there's stuff from that game that shows up in Alan Wake. And I was like, oh man.
And Alan Wake shows up in some of the DLC for Control.
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm not feeling this for like incredibly specific reasons, which may only apply to me. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still just intensely curious about Alan Wake 2, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just hear how you liked it.
I'm going to put a pin in that one and hopefully get back to it later in the year. Well, cool. Anything else?
No, I think that's it. I'm going to go play some Street Fighter or
nice
Persona 3 more likely.
We should offer a show note at the sort of the bottom of the show here as we start to roll credits on this episode. DJ and I are mixing up the format a little bit for this year. Just to give us a little more time to play a few more games. Or maybe play one game more.
Something like that.
Yeah. We're going to go bi-weekly this year. So fewer episodes, but those episodes should be especially good, right?
Yeah. That's how it works, right?
Yeah.
Show's not going anywhere. I know it's like
right.
I've had some shows I listen to. They're like, oh, we're doing fewer shows, and I get all sad. But no. Ultimately, like we talked about this a lot, and I think it'll be very helpful for the show, and just gives us more time to get into games and play more games, hopefully.
Yeah. Or play fewer games better.
Play fewer games better. Yeah, that's the slogan of the show.
That's our motto. Yeah. Yeah. Less hangovers, just more moderate consumption.
Yes. Yeah, getting, more responsible in our old age.
Responsible video game consumption. We need to change our title.
Yeah. There we go.
But we're not going anywhere. We'll still be in your feed. We're still active on Discord, hanging out, chatting about video games. We have other kind of, nebulous plans for how we want to fill some of the other weeks in the year. So we'll still do Backlog Attacks. We'll still do music shows every now and then. The things that you have come to love about Video Game Hangover will still be here. But we're just gonna let it breathe a little bit between episodes.
Yeah. The only real bad news about this, I realize, is that it's going to take us twice as long from this point to get to episode 666, the final episode of the podcast.
Right.
So, but, that's probably fine.
Yeah. Well, good. If you need, in the meantime, any more Video Game Hangover in your brain, you should follow us on that website that used to be called Twitter, at twitter.com/VGHangover.
It's still Twitter. It's still Twitter.
And you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. You can join us on the aforementioned Discord, hang out with us, and chat about video games, chat about movies, all kinds of other fun stuff that fills our lives full of joy. You can get a link to that at VGHangover.com. And we would always consider you a dear, dear friend if you would subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and anywhere else you can find the show, and maybe help us out by telling some of your other dear, dear friends about our podcast as well.
Yeah. Tell them we just gave Game of the Year to a Suika game, and we want to know what they think about that.
Yeah, that show's just all watermelons and fishing.
Yeah, just all watermelons. No, but seriously, that helps us out a lot. Helps us spread the word about the show, attract new listeners. We really appreciate it if you do that. We want to give thanks again to Fear of Dark for our intro and outro music. You can check out more of his work at fearofdark.bandcamp.com. And if you like what you hear, maybe buy his whole discography. That would be terrific.
Yeah. We'll be back in exactly 2 weeks. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.